Tonight, we are looking at a series, the things that are most surely believed amongst us. Luke chapter 1, from verse 1 to verse 3. And so we've been examining the things most surely believed. It says, for as much as many have taken in hand to set forth in order a declaration of those things which are most surely believed amongst us. Verse 2. So let's change the person on the laptop. He needs to speak in tongues for some time. It said, even as they delivered them unto us, which from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word. Verse 3, it said, it seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding in all things from the very first, to write unto thee in order, most excellent Theophilus. So I showed you that day, this is a transition between 4 generations. The apostles of Jesus that learned from him, who are the ministers of the word, they received from Christ, and then they communicated it to Dr. Luke, and Dr. Luke said he has had perfect understanding, so he was communicating it to Theophilus. So I said the way heritage is transferred is through instructions. Those who receive it, if they understand it, they now communicate it to the next generation. And that's what Luke was doing here. And I told you, in the Christian faith, there are things that are most surely believed. These are the things we cannot do without. And we've taken time to deal with these things one after the other. The first thing we dealt with is the doctrine of God. And we looked at the biblical concept of the person of God and everything that his person and his operation entails. In fact, we summarized that when we looked at the mystery of the Godhead. When we were done with that, we migrated to looking at the doctrine of Christ. And we did a part of the doctrine of Christ because the second part of that doctrine is intertwined with the doctrine of salvation. So in order not to repeat or overemphasize certain things, we decided to reserve it to deal with it when we are dealing with the doctrine of salvation. And when we looked at the doctrine of Christ, number one, we looked at his humanity, and then we looked at his deity. And then we looked at the hypostatic nature. That is the coexistence between his human nature and his divine nature. When we were done doing that, we now went further to look at his ministry or his administrative responsibility, and then we considered 4 aspects of that from his offices. So we looked at Jesus as God the Son, co-equal with the Father and co-equal with the Spirit eternally. And then we looked at Jesus as the Son of God. And we also looked at Jesus as the Son of Man. And then we looked at Jesus as the Christ. And we said for you to understand and appreciate his essence in his full sense, you have to know him in these 4 offices. So we looked at that. We were supposed to look at his ministry, which entails the incarnation, the atonement, and the mediatorship responsibility. But we only touched the incarnation because the atonement and the mediatorship responsibility of Jesus, which is a cardinal aspect of his ministry, is also included in the doctrine of salvation. So when we are looking at the doctrine of salvation, we will deal with that in depth. So we stopped at the incarnation and then summarized the doctrine of Christ. So in dealing with the doctrine of Christ, we looked at his person, and in his person we saw his humanity and his deity, and then we looked at his offices, and in his offices we looked at him as God the Son, Son of God, Son of Man, and Christ. And then we looked at a part of his ministry, which is his incarnation, and we stopped there.